Hi, my name is Jon-Andrew Auger-Andrews. I'm a sports medicine major at Pepperdine University, and I'm going to teach you how to do law of cosine and sine functions. So, with y equals cosine x, you would treat it the same way that you would do a sine x. However, they're very different on the graph when you look at them, starting off with this basic cosine function. So, you do the same thing. You look for the amplitude first, and then you look for the period first as well. Amplitude is the first coefficient in the front. Since it's a cosine x, we assume that there's only one cosine x. So the amplitude would just be a 1. So you look here for the amp. And it's just a 1, so right there. So then with the period, you do the same thing as you would your sine graph. It would be the same equation, 2 pi over b. And to find the period, you look in front of the x variable. And in this case, it would be 1 again. So then you plug it in, and then your period would be again 2 pi. 2 pi again. So let's go to the graph here. Your amplitude would be 1, negative 1, because you had to take the absolute value of it, so 1 and negative 1. Wavelengths and all that. But with cosine graphs, they don't originate from the origin, they originate from, in this case, the top amplitude. So we originate here going down. So with the cosine graph, rather than it starting at the origin like the sine graph, it starts at the amplitude, in which case it's going to be a 1. It's not negative 1 because it's not flipped. It's a positive, so it's going to stop at the positive amplitude. And we'll get to that negative 1 in the next video. So with this one, you're going to go down, and this is where it gets different from sine, because sine you intersect in the x on the x-axis at every pi. With cosine you hit the x-intercept every pi over 2. So it's going to look like this. You're going to go down, hit this, which is pi over 2, which is half a pi, because our period is 2 pi, keep that in mind. You go down all the way to the negative, and then the curve is going to be pi. And you go straight back up into 3 pi over 2, which is another half, in between pi and 2 pi. Go up and meet there. That is your first period. All that is one period. Okay, and then you just reflect that on the opposite end if it's asking for the interval between just like 2 periods on either side. So, same thing. Not drawn to scale, but so it's going to go hit the half of pi. The curve is going to come from pi. It's going to hit the other half and come back up this time over here. So that's how you draw or graph a y equals cosine x function. So now I'm going to teach you how to graph cosine functions that have translations or different looks on the graph. So what I mean by that is you have, say for example on this first cosine function you have a 2 as the first coefficient in front of the cosine x, and then over here you have a 2 in front of the x. So let's start with this one. What does it mean when there's a coefficient in front of the 2 cosine x? So don't worry about it, it's nothing big. All you need to know that now, since we have it 2, we look here for amplitude. So we know that now our amplitude is just raised to 2. And then our period remains the same. Period, again, is just 2 pi over b, which then becomes 2 pi because there's nothing in front of the x except a 1, but an invisible 1 because it'd be redundant to put a 1, so that's your period. And then, there you go. Plug that over, and there you go. 2 pi over 1, which is 2 pi. This part's redundant. So, that being said, we have 2 things that we need, and so since we know that cosine functions are going to intersect at every pi over 2, every half pi, and the curve is going to hit pi, we know what we're going to look at for the graph. So let's draw the graph right here. So right there. We'll have the interval be 0 to 2 pi. Keep it on this right side for now. So we know that the amplitude now, instead of 1, it's going to be a 2. So it's actually going to stretch up. So, like a cosine graph would, it starts at the highest amplitude. We write down the lower amplitudes here. And then we know that it's going to hit every half pi. So, let's draw this graph. So, this is strictly on the 0 to 2 pi range, domain rather. You would start here, go down, all the way to -2. So that's your other amplitude. Have the curve right below the pi, and then back up, hitting the other half, and then going the 2 pi. So that is one period. Now, if we want a 2-period graph, which is all this, we're going to have, not drawing a scale, of course. Same thing on this side. Negative, of course. And then 2 pi. So then it'd be the same thing here. I'll draw this really quick. Right there, have the curve, have the hump of the curve at the pi, intersect between that, and then finish off there. So that's how you graph this cosine function with that 2 cosine x. Simply put, this just raises your amplitude. You could have a 3, you could have a 4. Now all you know is that it's going to start at a 3 or 4, and also the absolute value of it, or when you absolute value, you get a positive and a negative. So therefore, next we're going to go do y equals cosine 2x. Now this will be, it'll look very interesting. With amplitude, we know, we look here, yet again, and it's just going to be a 1. Because it's one cosine. So then with a period, the period is going to be different. With the equation 2 pi over b, now we have this number to look at for your period. So now it's going to be 2 pi over 2, which equals pi. Now that's going to be different. It's actually going to constrict the graph. We're still reaching from the range. We're going to go from 0 to 2 pi to start with, and then I'll go to negative 2 pi to 2 pi. Or pi, rather. 2 pi will be too big. So, here's the graph. We'll start right there. So, now, the limit is pi, and the half is pi over 2. Now, since the period is now pi, the cosine graph is going to shrink, so that means it's going to hit the x-intercepts every half. Or every quarter, rather. That's the same thing over here. It hits every quarter. So, moving on. It's going to start at 1. We'll say this is 1. This will be negative 1. This will be pi over 4 because half of pi over 2 is pi over 4, and this will be 3 pi over 4 as well. So the graph is going to look like this. It's going to be very small. Again, hits every half of a, or now in this case every quarter of a pi. So all the way down. The hump is going to be right there. It's going to intersect this one and then go up again. And then on the same side here, it's going to be pi over 4 negative, like that. So that's how you graph it with a 2 in front of the x, and then a 2 cosine, or a 2 in front of the coefficient, a 2 as a coefficient in front of the cosine. And there you go. So now we have a y equals negative cosine x. So with this negative, all it is means it's going to be flipped. So the amplitude is going to be 1. The period will again be 2 pi over b. In this case, there's a 1 here because that's regular for your period. And then that's going to be a 2 pi over 1, which says is 2 pi. So the amplitude is 1, 2 pi is 1. The only difference is now it's a negative, so now you start here. Rather than on top here, you start here. And then the graph begins this way. So let me draw it for you. With this, it's going to be like this. You're going to start here, go up, hit the first quarter of the 2 pi of the first period, which is 2 pi. The quarter of 2 pi is pi over 2. Then you go up. The hump of that is pi. And then again, you hit this quarter, which is the third quarter. And then, well, 3 pi over 2, which is in, when you convert it, it's 2 pi. That's the third quarter of 2 pi. And then you go down like that. So then let me draw it on this side so you can get a better representation of what it is. Let me just make sure it's accurate. Not drawing the scale. So there you go. With the regular cosine function, it's going to look like this. It's going to start, if this is the graph, it's going to start from here down like that. This, it is literally just flipped upside down. And there you go. That's how you draw a cosine function. Same thing as a cosine, a negative cosine function. Same thing as a cosine function, just flipped.